If you web surf to the IP address of your printer, port 9100, wait a second, then hit stop. Here's what's going to happen. The 9100 tells it, connect on port 9100. By default, your web browser is going to try to connect on port 80. You don't want to do that. Anything that 9100 gets, pretty much, it's going to try to print. You hit stop to tell it to kill the connection. Here's what you might get if you tried web surfing to your printer on port 9100 in Firefox and an Internet Explorer. That's basically the basics of trying to get the root document off of a web server. Not useful, but fun to play with. If you want to print something using just Telnet, you can telnet to the port. So telnet to that particular IP address of that JetDirect box or Rico 7 or what have you on port 9100, enter some garbage, use the exit character for your telnet session, quit it, and if you go check, whatever you typed in this case hello printer, should be waiting for you on the printer. Like I said, raw printer protocol is very simple, it's very dumb. But it works most of the time. Setting the LCD from Telnet. Now, I used to do more complicated ways of doing this using escape sequences, but I was telling the fact by a dig user who saw one of my articles that you don't actually have to use the escape characters. You can Telnet to port 9100 into @PGL to tell you want to use a printer job language command and use the PGL command ready message display some text, then quit out. At that point, if you have a HP printer and you go check it out, you're going to see on the LCD screen the words some text. You can also do the exact same thing with Netcat if you're so inclined. This I know works on pretty much every HP printer I've ever tried. Some people refer to it as a security exploit. It is not. It's by design by HP, so you can send something in a print job to change the LCD. The Rico 7s do not implement this particular PGL command. One of the things you find about PGL, it's used by a lot of network printer vendors. However, not everybody implements all of it, and some people implement it differently. And that's what the results would be. Now, there's a few different ways of sending messages. There's the ready message, which I use, which basically puts the message up and that's it, and the printer's still online. The op message takes it offline, and the ST message takes it offline and sends a message back. Don't worry about that particular one for right now. These two, if you use them, takes the printer offline, they can't print. In theory, you could send the ready message to be what it shows, but the printer's actually offline. Or you can use it for social engineering, saying, printer problem, please call such and such number and talk to the person, if you're so inclined. Try changing the language with Hijacker. I've covered that before. Oh, another thing I'm aware of, some modern day network printers have web servers built in where they store documents that have been faxed to the multifunction printer, or they've been scanned on the multifunction printer, or just been printed. And you can find stuff on the web server, like if you go to one of the Rico 7s, you can find fax numbers that have tried to connect. That might be useful for social engineering, as well as documents that have been saved on the internal hard drive of the Rico 7 in PDF format, open to the world. Now, you can password enable them, but a lot of people don't. And if you're not filtering port 80, someone from outside your organization might be able to get in, look around, find documents you printed, social security numbers that you have, payroll records, whatever. File and web servers. Another cool thing you can do, and this doesn't matter if you have the password enabled or not. This is all using PGL commands over 9100. On the multifunction printers, in this case, I believe I used a HP 4100 with an internal JetDirect multifunction printer. You can actually FTP, well, it's not FTP. Basically, use PGL commands to upload and download files to and from it. And you can use Hijacker to do this particular task. You can also use that PFT program I mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, I'm going to do one thing at a time. I'd like to find someone that can help me code up something that would do it all at once so you can like grab everything from the printer at one time. Here's a few things I've found on network printers, JetDirect-based printers. In this particular path, I've found documents with names like that. They happen to be faxes or print jobs that have been sent in. I believe in that case it was JPEGs. TIFF files and fax out that were faxes. PCL files, which you can open up in SwiftView or reprint yourself by techniques I'll show you in a bit, in fax in, and other information. Like this is a log of different IP addresses that have contacted that particular JetDirect. And all of this can be done without a password, because it's all using PGL commands over port 9100. Where to put files? This is fun. Let's say you know there's a printer in an organization and you want your own file server. Well, telling people to download HiJetter to transfer files back and forth, you wouldn't want someone to do that. That's a pain in the ass. You want to use a standard protocol. Well, you can put the file there with HiJetter. In this case, this is a LaserJet 4100 MFP multifunction printer. I believe with 20 gigabytes of storage. If you go to this path in HiJetter and put a file, you can access it with this path via the web server. So let's say I put in this path, naughtylinuxgirls.avi. I could access it using this particular URL from anywhere in the world. So basically, you have a 20 gig where's and porn server sitting on the network. No passwords required, except for maybe for this web part. Maybe. Because a lot of times you can still get to the web page, you just can't necessarily get to the administration part of the web page if you don't have the password. I should have changed the background of this. This is showing a zombie scan. To really understand how this works, you might want to check out Fedora's notes on insecure.org. Basically, you use Nmap to do a zombie scan where you use the IP ID, you use the JetDirect box as a simple protocol stack. It has a predictable IP ID, and you fake a connection to the box you want to scan as the JetDirect's IP address. It responds back to the JetDirect. Its IP ID either does or does not get incremented based on whether or not the port's open. Then you scan for what the current IP ID is of the JetDirect box, and you can tell whether the port's open. It's really complex to explain. Fedora has a better illustration on his website, and I have a better explanation in my notes on my website. Bad thing about it is there's certain things you can't do. It'll allow you to turn on zombie scan, but at the same time do OS detection. If you turn on any of the flags, pretty much, your box has to talk directly to the box you're scanning, so it's going to give away any kind of anonymity. Sniffing and reprinting a print job. You should be able to do this with most of the modern security live boot CDs. For me, I used Auditor for this. Backtrack, well, thank you. Backtrack should have no problem doing it as well, but I didn't want to redo my video. All this video is stuff I did for Droops' Informaticon episode TV7, so check it out if you want to see this in its entirety. Here's me in Windows just sending a print job. Simple stuff. Now, at the same time that I was sending that print job, I used my Linux box. In this case, I just used the Auditor boot CD. Backtrack should work. I used EtherCap in text mode. Tell it to be quiet. I don't want to see anything. I tell it to write out a printer dump and do a man-in-the-middle attack using ARP. Now I have to be on the same local area network to pull this one off. And I'm going to ARP poison between either the print server on the network and the little JetDirect box, or between the box that's printing direct IP printing to the JetDirect box. And I sit there and wait for it to start collecting data. And eventually, I quit out of it. Then, once I have my dump, or I think I've collected enough data to have a dump, I go ahead and go into eForreal, open up the dump I created in EtherCap. I'm going to use a filter real quick to only show me stuff that was traveling to port 9100. That's that raw printer port I was talking about before. If you want to use IPP or one of the other protocols, basically change the port. The same thing should work. So I'm telling it, find one's a send flag, so I just find the start of the communications. And the destination IP address is port 9100 TCP. Once I find them, I find several different print jobs. I can right-click on one, follow the stream, and I only want to see it in one direction. I don't need to see the entire conversation. I just want to see what was sent to the printer. Once I have that, I make sure I set it to RAR, and I'm going to save that out as a file. If you've ever done direct IP printing, if you ever do printing to a file in Windows, you might have created a little PRN file. This is the exact same thing. Once I save this out, I basically have the entire print job in a little file I can use. And I'll show you how to use it in a second. This is me just telling it the file name. I'll skip ahead. Now, to replay that print job, I can do one of two things. I can either FTP it to the printer, and by the way, I'm obviously not going to be using the same printer that I sniffed it from. But since PCL and PostScript are pretty much universal, as long as your printer understands PCL, PostScript, the job control language stuff may differ, but the PCL and PostScript is going to be fairly universal. So you'll be able to take that same file to a printer that you control and FTP it to it if it supports FTP printing, and you'll have your print job come out on that printer. You can also use something like SwiftView for PCL, which isn't open source or freeware, unfortunately, or you can use GhostView in Windows or Linux to view PostScript files, so you don't even have to reprint them. You can just capture them and look at them. You can also do the same thing with the Netcat. Basically here, I'm going to take the particular print job I saved, and I'm going to Netcat it out to the IP address of the printer on port 9100. And since the raw port is a fairly simple protocol and pretty much prints anything that's sent to it, it's going to see that print job and print it for me. Bingo. Now I'm going to go real quickly into a few things you can do for scripting various types of attacks and doing odd things with programming languages and printers. Learn about PGL, printer job language. Here's a tech reference source that has a description of a lot of information about how PGL works and other commands I haven't shown. I'm going to use Perl because sockets are easy in Perl. PHP you can also do some stuff with. I don't have an example in this particular slideshow, but if you check out my webpage, I do have a little PHP webpage I created that you can use for sending messages to a printer. Sometimes you have to use the universal escape language, which is basically the escape character, which is ASCII equivalent, decimal 27, 1B hex, or 033 octal, to tell it to escape and use this sequence, and then start your PGL commands. And then use it again to go back into your page description commands. Sometimes you have to use it, sometimes you don't, but that's what that little part is when you see it in some of the code I'm about to show you. Now here's me actually telnetting to a JetDirect box or a Rico 7 and manipulating it with PGL commands. I connect to it. I shouldn't have wrapped. I'm going to say PGL info ID. It tells me what kind of printer it is. Status tells me it's online. The amount of memory, the page count, and other information. So you can create your own little Perl script to query all sorts of information from the printer. Here's a quick Perl script. Sets the socket, connects to it, uses the /e to send the escape character, and all this one does is send a single message that you define in the command line to the printer's LCD screen. You can print a single line of text the same way pretty much, you just don't send the escape sequence. This one actually uses a loop, sets the LCD, and it does a countdown to destruction. So like, 1, 2, 3, boom, or however you want to implement it. All these examples are on my website. I'll show you all for that in a second. Printer spam. I wanted to mess around with a programming language called FreeBasic. So I created a quick multi-threaded application that allows you to use any command, insert ~IP, and it will insert the IPs in order in whatever range you tell it to. So in this case, I'm telling this particular range of IP address, use IP iterator, and execute this command for every single IP address. What this is a pre-saved print job that I generated in Windows, and I netcat it out to port 9100. So if I know an organization's IP range, you could try sending a print job to every single printer at that organization. I was surprised people haven't done this before. You get fax spam all the time. I've never seen printer spam. And a lot of organizations leave port 9100 open because they don't think about it. So this would probably work for a lot of organizations. And you can IP iterator from my website as well. It's a little rinky-dink FreeBasic tool, but it works in both Linux and Windows if you compile it. Multi-threaded and all that cool stuff. If it doesn't work, fix it and send it back to me. If anybody has any cool ideas for some of the stuff I've shown you, a lot of you out there are a hell of a lot better coders than I am. I'd love to have help on these projects. Simple IP stacks. There's some DOS attacks that can be pulled off. Because of the simple IP nature, a lot of them are like single-threaded. So if you connect to port 9100, nothing else can connect to port 9100 at the same time. So you can take out that particular printer by connecting to it, and no one else can connect to it and print. Huge print jobs. In this case, I'm netcatting out my entire hard drive to that printer and trying to print it. Don't be an ass and do these kind of things. But I'm just saying that's a possibility. This is no reason why you want to do IP restrictions on your JetDirect box.